I have been looking forward to this meeting for so long. It was actually the in your Live Your Vision, the World Needs What You Have Facebook. That first, it was later that I found this, but it was that first paragraph that really captured me when you had said, you used to be in a place of feeling hopeless, purposeless, drifting through life, wondering if the best years of your life had passed. And that statement, that feeling is something that I work with a lot of the women that I work with. They're feeling that same thing, and they feel regret or slightly resentful towards maybe choices or the path they took, whether it be, raising children or, giving up their career for their families or their spouses. And I just want to know kind of your journey, like how did that start? Because I love that statement. And, now watching you and how you lead other women through this, it's very empowering. So if you could just tell me a bit about your journey, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah. Well, my husband and I have been married for 31 years. We'll just put it out there. Easy, we're high school sweethearts and, that kind of thing. So we were married for about 7 years, about 16 years into our relationship. We started having some really bad, really difficult troubles. Now I appreciate what Sasha said, because we're two very driven people that were actually just driving each other apart. That's what we were doing. Yeah. We were competing really for the stage in a lot of ways, and just our time, and yet wanted to be together, but it was really more of a competition than a collaboration or a cooperation, Yeah. So it was really difficult to see how this was going to work out long term, and it ended up being at that point a point of contention to the point where we wanted to split. So we were with other people, we were getting a divorce, we were so bad, we were in such bad state at that point in time. We had other places we were going to go live and everything else. Everything was on glide slope for divorce. So we ended up going through counseling, therapy, workshops, churches, you name it, the whole gamut of things you do to try and fix your relationship when you're desperate. And really nothing worked. And finally we were invited by one last individual to come to a reconciliation, learn this reconciliation piece through their church. So I agreed to it mainly from the standpoint of, let's just figure this out, where outside of the attorney's office, it'll be a lot cheaper. Now, before we get to a mediator or an attorney. So we ended up going through that process. And in that process, we ended up learning these incredible reconciliation skills and learning how much conflict comes up from within, internally. I mean, obviously with each other, but also from a lot of other things. Past. Yeah. So we ended up at that point just gleaning so much knowledge and understanding about how do you even, conflict's good. Reconciliation is good. It's part of the bonding process. It's part of how you get closer. It's not necessarily to be feared or like it doesn't mean you're not made for each other, which is all this, the ways that we interpreted it, Yeah. So we ended up getting through this, and at the very, the very tail end of this, this resolution piece, I was ready to go, okay, great. We've cleared all the skeletons from the closet. We've made peace with one another. Now let's go on and move on in our separate ways, because all we have to do is sign papers. My husband looked at me and he actually said, and I was shocked when he said it, but he said, would you like to start again? I was like, no, I'm already on my way. I'm pretty determined by that point. And so then he looked at me again and he said, well, how about a date? Would you go on a date with me? And of course, honestly, Dolly, I couldn't say no. It just came out of me like, yes. And that was the start of a brand new, so we made our relationship over from that point forward. And so fast forward the tape then to where I started this part of my company, but I lost both my parents. We had transitioned out of a two-decade career, the two of us together. He had started his coaching practice, which is really quite dynamic. It's like he's kind of a Renaissance man. He's an adventurer. And he was very busy with that. I'd taken some time off to be with my kids to help get them launched before college. And now it was kind of like, well, what am I going to do? And I could feel myself getting bitter and resentful, as you mentioned, because I'm watching the world go by. I've served all these other people for so long, with raising my children and with my church and working, volunteering and different things like that. I felt like, well, now what's in it for me? You know, I'm a little young to just
Yeah.
retire, and I'm not the kind of person either that is just like, I just want to go play tennis or, you know, have lunch and have no real purpose. I became very depressed at that point, really depressed. And just thought, like I mentioned, like you mentioned, that, okay, maybe the best years are behind me, but I'm too young for this. Like, really, this is too depressing.
Yeah.
So I started to do a big self-reflection, and I started to get into the inventory of what are you? I mean, this is ridiculous. I'm having this conversation with myself, right? This is ridiculous, Julie. You must be good for something at this point. You can't do what you were doing. Your children are gone. Your husband's on his own, doing his own thing. Your parents died. Your brothers are on another, you know, are alienated. We're estranged because of the death and all of that. It was a very tragic time. They have some addiction issues that are unfortunate, but so my family, so I felt this very much this aloneness in the world, but at that point, but I feel like I was like, Julie, knock it off. Like, self-pity is not going to get you anywhere.
Right.
And you have a responsibility to yourself, honestly, to take responsibility for your own happiness. And I had put that on him so much, like it was up to him and it was up to my kids to give me a purpose, and it was up to my family to support me. So I had given so much power over, you know, and then when they kind of pulled out that was no longer there, it was like, hey, Julie, where are you? And so anyway, I just said, you know what, you need to take responsibility. And so I started doing an inventory of my own assets at that point. And I went through this, like, well, what are you good for? What are your strengths? And right there, what's important to you? So I did an inventory with that. So what are you excited about? What gets you out of bed in the day? What are you going to jump out of bed and be excited to do? And what do you believe anyway? Meaning, like, not like spiritually or anything like that, but not morally or spiritually, but in terms of the way the world works and how you're going to fit into it. This is your time. What are you going to do about it? So I had to take responsibility for my own happiness.
Yeah. Would you say that journey, did that affect your depression? Almost like that action taking? Is that?
Oh, without a doubt, Dolly.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, understanding what my strengths are, my natural God-given strengths are, and realizing that, like, the research is crazy on that. You will operate at nearly a 60% level of increase you operate in that realm versus your weaknesses, which is what I was focused on, you know. So there's that. So automatically that gives me a boost, right? When I'm looking at what's important to me, you know, then going, okay, great. Now I'm doing, when I look back, I'll like what I see instead of being regretful of that. Yeah. And then, you know, when passion drives innovation, so I'm really excited now about what I get to do. So once I figured these things out, it took me some time and a lot of money, to be honest, to figure that out. So that all of a sudden, like, brought me out of this depression. And of course, getting connected with what I believe and serving others and that kind of thing. I mean, I now felt invigorated. And actually, the women that I work with, oftentimes they're coming in a really down state.
Yeah.
And, you know, and then we find a new way. And that affects marriage in a huge way. That was another really big downturn in our marriage because of I'm sure you've heard that expression, but if mama ain't happy, nobody's happy. You can't pour from an empty cup, and, you know, love your neighbor as you love yourself. So it doesn't matter where your spectrum of reference is.
Yeah.
If you're not happy, you're not going to be much good to anybody else.
Yeah. And it's not anybody else's job to make you happy. So how are you going to find that within yourself? Where are you going to, you know, and I loved in one of your lives, you talked about Confucius, you know, and the we hear, we forget, we see, remember, we do, we understand. Because I would say exactly, as soon as I gave myself that action step, immediately what I was battling, my own depression, that own, you know, that negative thoughts, the sadness, as soon as I gave myself, I like to think that passion and action, or give myself a purpose and an action, and that will evoke my passion. So that was kind of where I started, and I just started I would make myself do things that would give me some sort of, not validation, but I wanted to contribute to something, you know, serve somewhere. And that serving mentality with an action, like actively serving, started really, really changing just my own mental state, my own, and what I was then bringing into my house and into my marriage. But I was I was blaming my husband for a long time for the negative thoughts. You know, it was his fault, or I expected him to make me feel better. When you started when you started working with women, you kind of start with a few guidelines, like finding that God-given talent, that God-given gift, you know, and how that transformed your life. You know, you go through a series of questions. Can you just start on one of the questions of, like, just to give that step one, if you're okay with that?
Yeah. I mean, if you're trying to figure out your own worth, because it all comes down to, like, where do I fit in? What value do I have? What purpose do I have? So many of those things are so interrelated. You definitely need to start with who you're created to be. Like, what is it? And regardless of what your belief system is, whether the universe, you know, like someone's universe, you know, Kermit the Frog, I don't care what you think, but you have a certain set of skills and gifts uniquely yours. And hopefully you understand that. Most people understand that by this time in their life, but most people I've found have taken very little time and energy to figure out what they actually are. They have a vague understanding of them, but they're not crystal clear. So one quick action step that I always give people, and it's super fun and super easy to do, is go ahead and ask 5 people in your life what they see as your top 3 strengths. And have that be 5 different people from 5 different walks of life. You're someone from work, someone from church, someone from school, someone from your kid's school, one of your family members. Not all family members, not all school, not all the gym. People that you know from different spectrums. And ask those 5 people what your top 3 strengths are. Just send out a text. Make it simple. Say, hey, I'm just curious. What do you think my top 3 strengths are? What do I bring to the party? Yeah. And it's amazing. First of all, people are happy to do it. It's very positive and encouraging. Second of all, the feedback you get is so encouraging to you, of course. Yeah. And third of all, it's like, oh, there's so much crossover. You start to see where your top 5 strengths are, because you'll hear maybe different words that are the same. And then you can create your own sort of power statement, which is what I help people do in my class. Like, my top 5 or 6 strengths, if you will, are in one statement are: I am a strategic, problem-solving visionary who perseveres to win others over. Optimistic.
Oh, that's fantastic. Oh, I want that. Oh, I love that. Because that's a statement you want everybody to say about you too, right? Like, that's amazing. Yeah, that's powerful. That's very powerful.
That's taken from the data, Dolly, that I've gotten from other people. It's not what I made up about myself. Yeah. It's what other people have said. And also, I have some assessments, some computerized assessments that I do with people as well to dig a little deeper. So I can't argue with that. I learned a long time ago. My husband was originally, when we first got married, has his master's in clinical physiology and worked in cardiac rehab. And so we learned the power from a hospital setting of great data. So if you collect the data, there's not a lot you can do to argue with it, right? Yeah. Whereas when we were trying to kind of build up our own self-esteem, we're like, yeah, I'm warm and I'm smart sometimes. Yeah. You know, like I'm this, but I'm also that. So instead of that, but, we get rid of it and just say, okay, I just want you to look at the data. It's only the data. I don't care. And so you can argue all day long, but this is what the truth is. And then you feel obligated to live into that space, because it's like, either you're going to be what you're going to be, or you're going to run from yourself.
When you're working with these women and they are transforming their lives, now they have their powerful statement. They feel empowered by, the people in their lives. Do you ever come across a situation where what this woman is deciding to do, it conflicts, there's conflict between her and her husband, or that he doesn't want to maybe stand by what she's trying to pursue? Like, have you ever had that, or how would you manage through that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't typically, let me just back up, because the second piece of the work, early on in the work that we do, we make sure that whoever is the work that they're doing is aligned with their values. So we go through a pretty extensive values clarification exercise and assessment. And when we clarify the values, 9 times out of 10, if they're married, their marriage is on the, in the top 10, top 5. So, for example, usually what we're building out then from there, creating whatever vision we create for someone, is in alignment with their marriage. It's not, and that's really important. I find that sometimes people are good at things, or they get a kind of, wild hair idea, or their passions or something get excited, but if they're not aligned with their values, that's when they have a lot of crashes with their marriage or their family.
Yeah.
But because we line them up with their values first, we do find less marriage conflict. As a matter of fact, it's a byproduct of work with me typically that their marriages get better. And so it's crazy, but again, it's when you start to get filled up and happy, it does definitely change things. Now, I will say this. I don't want to say there's never any friction. Where the friction comes is not usually because their husbands are so opposed to what they're doing, but it's usually because their husbands haven't seen them in this light, and there's all this sudden this sort of emergence of this new identity. They're used to seeing them typically kind of being kind of depressed or in a subservient role, and all of a sudden they're starting to shine a little bit and get happier, and there's this adjustment that has to happen within the marriage that is sometimes a little disconcerting, and that does, I will not lie, that may bring a conflict or two, but as I've already shared, I also counsel on that. So I help them to understand it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's part of how you're going to bond on a deeper level if you know how to handle it. So this is how you'll handle it. And we expect conflict when you're emerging into a new identity. But at the end, what I have found is that their husbands typically have a whole new level of respect. And I found this in my own marriage. It was like, it created like a new, because we've been married so long, but it created like this new, wow, this whole new dynamic between the two of us, that he was like, wow, I have so much respect for you now. I really appreciate you. And he's like, I don't even know who you're becoming, which created a little bit of mystery again. So it's a little bit more of a game. Again, that fun, like, I don't have you all figured out. So it's not so boring. So it actually put a new spark in our marriage.
No, I definitely agree. I think that's awesome. And now you and your husband, Joel, you also work together at the performance group as a couple. How is that? How is the dynamics of working with your spouse?
Well, again, it's being really clear. Things that help are really clear. The things that help with that are, we're both very clear on what our strengths are and what they're not.
Yeah.
So it's very strengths based in terms of who leans in and who leans out.
Okay.
When you're clear on that, then there's a lot less friction. So it's like, oh, that's his area of expertise. Let me bow out on this one, back down. On the flip side, when I get off the phone with you, we have a marketing meeting and I'm more of the expert than he is. So he's like, could you help me on this? Sure. So of course, conflict, because we're like, I mean, we're doing everything together. We cook together, we raise our children together, we're in bed together, and then we're planning our future together, professionally. So of course there's friction, but we love it. I mean, we had a 4-hour fight on Saturday, to be right? Let's just put it out there. And the beauty of that is, he said to me, and I completely agree, he goes, you know what? Very few people will cancel their plans and spend 4 hours fighting something out to get to the other side. Yeah. That's why we have the marriage that we have.
Well, and isn't it amazing when you have that security in your relationship, which my husband and I we only established this after we went through our, turmoil and everything and came to the other side. But now when we have an argument, he always tells me, I like when we have an argument because I know that what we resolve afterwards just makes us better. And it makes us stronger. And I never used to see conflict like that. I was raised way different, where you avoid conflict at any cost. So now when we have these, they're drawn out longer because we really want to resolve it. But then when we resolve it, we're so much stronger for it in the end. And I think that's, you're right. When you can take that time to put the work and the heart into the resolve. I mean, that's a beautiful way of that's a beautiful resolution. But you're the performance group. Now, I feel like it has a lot to do with communication too, right? Like you teach a lot of communication. Yeah.
You,
Yeah. So that's got to help with that too.
absolutely. I mean, my husband teaches emotional intelligence to CEOs and doctors and
Yeah.
people like that too, like top tier executives, and all the time, just to help them have better leadership skills, better marriages, better lives, quite frankly.
Yeah.
So he has his own, so we do both of that. We're always a work in process on that and teaching it all the time.
Yeah, no, I can only imagine. I have someone that I'll be speaking to about communication because it's a huge breakdown. The men are from Mars, women are from Venus is a scratch on the surface. Like just the difference.
Yeah.
I loved what you said just earlier about the when you and Joel came to that place and he just looked at you and said, do you want to start again, start over? I remember that moment for us, and we actually had a little bit of a time where we almost had to mourn our previous relationship and what we were, and we had to rebuild new. Did you go through anything like that?
Oh, we say all the time, totally. It was a total teardown. We both
Yeah.
actually said to one another, like, let's just start from the point where neither of us knows how to do this at all. Like, let's agree that we don't know how to be married.
Yeah.
Successfully. So if we both take that mindset on, then we're both complete learners. The rest of it is just water under the bridge and a warm up, if you will.
Yeah.
17 years. Okay, we're a little slow starters, but it's a warm up. But
Yeah.
it was definitely that period of time. I'm not sure we mourned it so much, although we probably, I just felt such an overwhelming gratitude, honestly, Dolly, for me to have this chance to start over.
Yeah.
I didn't feel as much mourning at the time, maybe a little bit about the way we hurt each other and all that, but I definitely felt like, I can't believe I'm getting this next chance to live this life. This man who I love and adore,
Yeah. I think it was almost mourning time lost. I think is maybe, like how do we waste so many years fighting or not connecting? Almost, maybe that. And one thing that we found in that following year was the impact that it had on our children and their emotional stability and their communicating with us and wanting to be with us. Did you feel that in your home, that it just affected the house or the girls when they came home, or?
Well, honestly, when the original blow up happened, we didn't have children. Which is even more, like, people always say to us, you stayed together and you didn't have children? I was like, he says, people ask me that all the time. I'm like, yeah, we did actually. Why did we? But you know what? We did. So anyway, but now, like, even me becoming, like, moving into this space that I'm in now and being this coach for women, that kind of come out of being, like, I went into this stay-at-home mom for like 3 years or 4 years, and then I came back out emerged as a businesswoman. The kids are really happy and really grateful for that, and they love it that we work together. They love it that we bump, that we work things out. They love watching us do what we do. So my older daughter, how has it helped her? She's in an incredible relationship now with this amazing man who just adores her. And he's 24 and has a great job, and he would marry her in a heartbeat as soon as she's in college. And so he's chosen wisely, I think, which I'm really happy about.
Yeah. Just, I guess, I know that you're a spiritual person. I'm a very spiritual person. Is there any kind of a scriptural passage or anything that you have held dear to you in moments of struggles?
I think Romans 12, if you're talking about passages in the Bible, with verses, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. It talks about, in view of God's mercy, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Offer yourself as a living sacrifice. So when you will take the time to let your mind be moved and changed and transformed, your whole life will be. And then you can offer yourself as a living sacrifice. And then he goes on to say, you will be able to know God's will, his good, pleasing, and perfect will for your life. So there's such a security that comes from being willing to change. That I think, to me, is one that I hold near and dear.
Julie, thank you so much for taking this time to just, share your message. And I absolutely love you. And I hope to see you again this next fall if you're going to Zone again. And or maybe if I can make it out to Malibu, that would be amazing. But I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Dolly. This is so fun. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.